Hey guys, it's Jolene from Smith's Nature Friendly Farms. We are hanging out in the garden today, and today we're going to talk about a tamarillo plant. All right guys, so I have grown a very unique plant for me. As if you followed me in the past, you know I like growing the weird stuff. I may not grow it again, but I like to grow it at least once to say I have, and even if it didn't thrive very well, it's still fun to say I've tried. Well, this tamarillo has been an interesting one. And a tamarillo, don't mistake it with a tomatillo, although it is in the same family along with tomatoes and eggplants. It is a completely different type of fruit. So we are going to take a good look at it, and we're going to see how I grew it and give you a little bit of background on it, and also a couple of tips I learned about growing it. It certainly gave me some lessons along the way. So first off, here's the seed. I got the seed from Baker's Creek. It is, as it states, a dwarf tamarillo, so I would assume that you can get ones that are not dwarf, but we have grown the dwarf version. They grow about 6 to 10 feet tall, and as you can see, this one is actually probably close to it's more about 5 feet. I'm about 5 feet. So it is as tall as me, maybe a little bit taller. So maybe about 5.5. So we're getting up there in height. And you can see we have little bits of fruit on it. And I've actually got another one grown in a pot that I'm going to show you. And both have grown quite differently. This is one that we grew that actually has the ability to grow straight into the ground. So even though it's in a pool, the pool is cut, the bottom is completely cut open. So this guy has free access to all the soil below, whereas the other one is grown in a pot. So I thought we'd start with this one and then we'll move over to show you the pot. So these guys are actually native to South America. However, New Zealand is the biggest producer of their fruit, which I thought was really quite interesting. And the US is the biggest importer of their fruit, which also was interesting, but then also somewhat kind of predictable. US, I think, is one of the biggest importers in general. But that is interesting to know that New Zealand is producing a lot of it. So as I mentioned, it's a relative of the tomato plant, eggplant, all that fun stuff. So it's a tropical in nature. So in the zone I'm in, which is zone 8B in South Mississippi, this guy won't survive outside. I am interested to see if it might have the tendency to come back, but I believe it's going to grow just like a tomato plant, which means it's not going to come back. But it could be overwintered in the greenhouse. So that's what I'm planning to do. I'm going to put one in the greenhouse and see what it does throughout the season. Now, if you're in a climate zone 10, 11, really tropical, you guys can grow this as a perennial. And then, of course, back home, Canada, you guys definitely would have to bring it inside. And I don't even know that it would make it through a greenhouse because I don't think you could keep it warm enough. But perhaps with some good technology, you could, for sure. But it's self-fertile, definitely intolerant of any frost. And it really grows a lot like a tomato plant. Now this is the one that I grew in a pot. You can see that it's actually got fruit that's ready, which is exciting. And I have tasted the fruit. We'll talk about the fruit here in a second. But I'm going to tell you first off what I've learned about growing tamarillos in a pot. That certainly has been probably my biggest learning. But they don't like wet roots. That's the key. So if you have it in a container like this where you've got plastic on the bottom and that plastic holds water, this guy got really unhappy with water being held at the bottom. So once I took that off, I saw greater improvement in the growth in my plant. It did have leaves originally all the way up, but that was something that really became clear. This plant tells you a lot by its leaves. They start drooping, it's probably thirsty or overwatered. They did go yellow and fall off when they were sitting in too much water at the bottom. So really pay attention to the leaves of your tamarillo plant. It doesn't like to dry out. It is not a drought tolerant plant. It will really start to droop, and that'll be the key sign that you need to get it watered. So I do recommend like a fast draining soil with it, and then watching it closely to make sure that you're keeping up with the watering. Fast draining soil is probably going to be your best benefit, and just not having it pool in any sort of water. At first I really thought it needed all that water, and it was quite quick to be apparent that it didn't. Let's talk about this fruit. Interesting, super interesting fruit. not the tastiest, to be honest with you. It has like this immediate pungent fruit taste. It's almost textured like a papaya, kind of a tropical fruit, but then the bitterness hits you kind of as an undertone, and it takes away from that sweetness. I would imagine it makes a really good jam, because once you add that sugar in and take out the bitterness, I think it would be excellent. Now, I hear that if you don't eat the skin, that it's much less bitter, but it's pretty hard. It's not like, it's a tiny little fruit. It's not very big. Lots of seeds on the inside. I still get bitterness even without, I didn't have a lot of skin on that. Lots of seeds. You could easily propagate like seeds from this. Now they are tiny. Seed germination was super easy. I found this plant in general really easy to grow. In fact, I find tomatoes tricky, and I found this easy. It really, as long as I didn't overwater it, which I was definitely guilty of, it was relatively easy to grow, easy to germinate. You do want to be aware that these guys are considered mildly toxic. So if they haven't turned fully orange yet, they may be mildly toxic to you. So stick to eating only the fully orange ones. Now, one thing I will say, despite the fact that they don't taste overly great, they are supposed to be incredibly healthy for you, including actual, like, helping you with weight loss. And I don't know if any of that's true. Always see a doctor before taking advice. Don't take advice from me. I'm no doctor. But online, there's quite a bit of research and information that does state that these guys are very good for you. Anti-cancer properties, that kind of stuff. So do your research, but check into it. But overall, that's probably why a lot of people are purchasing them, is to juice them and put them into smoothies so that they get the health benefits from them. Now you can see it's got some bug damage on it. I actually don't know what kind of bug that is that's been eating on the leaf, but one thing I will tell you, that the hornworms love it. And you guys that follow me know we still love hornworms here. We just moved them to a different location. You can see that this, I'm pretty sure that was cleaned off by a hornworm, because early on this guy did get caught with a hornworm. I just relocate the hornworms because they turn into these gorgeous hawk moths, but for those of you that don't like hornworms, you would have to be mindful they do like this plant because it's in the same family as your tomatoes. So although it was super fun to grow, it's probably not one I'm going to plant again. Not that I'll never plant it again, but it's just not one that'll be on my must plant each year. Not like cucumbers, for example. I have to have cucumbers. And in fact, I'll try and have cucumbers 3 times a year if I can. But this guy, he'll be a maybe every couple of years I grow them for fun, we'll see kind of thing. All right, guys, that's it on the tamarillo plant. One that was fun to grow, kind of interesting, not the best tasting fruit, but certainly interesting. As usual, you guys, be friendly, be kind.